Hello and welcome to Experiencing Love. I'm your host, Philip Jocks, and I'm so glad that you're here. I had a moment way earlier today where I was really proud of myself for really walking the walk and not just talking. I'm by no means perfect, so it makes me happy when I see myself trying and doing a little bit better. I taught myself a tool that I use whenever I have to make a decision. Something important comes up in my life, and it's not something where the answer just easily comes to me. This tool helps me figure out what I feel like the true direction I'm meant to go in is. I'll give you some context. I was in the grocery store about mid-afternoon when I get a phone call from my mom. She sounds super excited and tells me that she found out plane tickets to Poland are extremely cheap right now. By extremely cheap, I mean way less expensive than it should be during this time of year. And these were for tickets for early to mid-July. Those tickets could get pricey, especially buying them so close to the summertime. Some of these tickets round trip are hundreds of dollars cheaper than they normally would be. And with all this excitement, she asked me if I wanted to go with her to Poland this summer. She and my little brother already had plans to go. They already bought tickets. But in seeing the cheaper tickets, she saw it possible that maybe I could join them too. As I was a little bit busy, I asked her if I could talk to her more about it later. And then for the next few hours, I tossed the idea in my mind back and forth, trying to figure out what is it that I really wanted to do. And here's one thing I've learned about making decisions, especially when they're tough to make. If you have a decision that's difficult, I find that one side will generally lean more towards love and the other towards fear. It could be love for yourself, love for your mission, love for another person. And the fears can be anything from losing any of the loves I just talked about, or a fear of unsafety, a fear of uncertainty, a fear of not being enough. Decisions can be hard to make because one side of us, the love side, knows what we want, knows what we need, and is pointing us in the right direction. The fear side is usually the easier option. And to clarify, usually the love side is scarier than the fear side because it's easier to shrink into fear than grow into love. When I speak about love and fear in this way, I speak about them as directions, not exactly emotions. So returning to this story, my decision was either going or staying home. I could either go on what would be a surprise trip for me, or I could use that time to stay home and maybe work on my business, do a couple side jobs, earn some money. And the tool that came into play was me just asking, how can I act out of love and not out of fear? For me, it's a simple yet profound question because it has me weighing the options in a different way rather than weighing the options in terms of potential outcomes or costs. I weigh them in terms of what I feel called to do. It almost returns me more to an emotional, I'd go deeper and say spiritual knowing within this decision. I asked, which choice is out of love? That question could be hard to answer. So I usually make it easier on myself by then asking some more clarifying questions. Or I asked the question in a different way. I asked, if all of my objections melted away, if every single excuse and limiting belief I had was gone, what would I really want to do? And immediately I knew that I wanted to go. And it wasn't because I wanted to go on a vacation or I wanted to go on a trip. I wanted to go because I haven't seen my grandparents in a very long time. Unfortunately, my grandma is going through later stages of dementia. It's tough on the family. And I don't know how much time either of my grandparents have left. They played such a big role in who I became when I was growing up. Even though they are halfway across the world, I saw them nearly every year for many years in a row. And I always enjoyed spending time with them on their farm. I enjoyed running around their little village. And to think that I don't have that many of those left is a little sad. It reminds me to be grateful for the memories that I have and to know that there aren't that many more memories that I might have with them. So if nothing else, if this was the last thing that I did, I'd want to go. Conversely, after answering this, I then realized that by staying, I was shrinking into my fears. I was afraid of my financials. Will I have enough money to pay off the credit card bills and my loans for that month and the next one? Will I have the ability to spend money while I'm abroad? The fears I had were strictly financial, really. And this isn't to say that it's an excuse to not think about financials or to think about money. It's just a reminder not to let it completely control my life. Because I also know this: who we are when we have nothing is who we are when we have everything. If I don't make time to be with friends and family now, or just better yet, if I don't make time for the special things now, who's to say I'm gonna make time later? Tony Robbins always said this quote: if you won't give a dime out of $1, you won't give 1,000,000 out of 10, or 100,000,000 out of 1,000,000,000. And that stuck with me because it's not about how much you give or what you do. It's about who you become, about who you are, regardless of the situation. The best way to know who you are is to look at yourself when you really feel like you have nothing. And this goes for every area of your life too. If you want to know what you're going to be like in a relationship, look at yourself, look at your behavior, look at who you are now when you're single. If you wonder what you're going to be like when you own your own home or you're renting out your own apartment, look at the way you treat your room now. If you wonder how you're going to treat your job or your career 20 years down the line, look at how you treat your work right now. I guarantee that there is a path, there is a trajectory of growth and of progress for you. I think that people's lives crash down around them because they were missing some lesson. They were missing some rule that was crucial for them to get to the next level. And the only way that they could learn that lesson is to start with nothing or to return to nothing. I chose this opportunity, where I am now, to recreate who I am as a person. Although I have these fears with money, I make sure to do these practices every week, despite not making that much, because it's more important to become the person that does these things now, so that when more money's coming in later, I treat it the same way. With every penny that comes in now, I immediately split it into buckets. It happens automatically in my bank, and each bucket has a different percentage. Ultimately, I have 3 buckets, adding up to 64%-ish, that have to do with investments, or in the future it'll be investments, and just regular bills to pay off. And then I have 3 other buckets, which are called my donations bucket, my dream bucket, and my emergencies bucket. And you could imagine what each bucket is for. Emergencies are for emergencies. My dreams are for my dreams. It's to get myself little gifts along the way, because I have no intention of being miserable until I quote unquote have everything. And the third is donations, which is a promise I made to myself that no matter where I am in life, I will always find a way to give. Of all the money I make, I set aside 20% strictly for donations, to give it to someone who needs it more than I do. It's non-negotiable. It comes out of every single dollar, and it's there, ready to get put to good use. I just look for a good cause. And there's many out there, so it's really just about choosing one. And I went on this tangent to show you just how detailed this small part of my life is, because I know one day when I have thousands, if not millions of dollars coming into my bank account, I want it to be split up in some way. I want to make sure that I'm setting aside a little bit of money for myself, a little bit for emergencies, a fair bit for donations and for giving, and then a whole bunch into different portfolios and different investments to make sure that I'm growing my money. I got to set that up now at a point when I was making nothing, because when I have nothing is exactly when I want to change who I'm becoming. If I start with this when I have nothing, well then when I have everything, there is no other version of me to fall back on. It's like hitting the new save button over all your old saves so that you don't even have the option to go back. You don't have the option to return to how you were before. I think this all came up. I started talking about this all because I was just proud of myself for asking the question. Think about how many people don't ask themselves questions, not consciously. I heard this quote once that our thoughts are just questions we ask ourselves and answer. We're always asking questions. We're always giving answers. It's our job to decide what the quality of those questions are. And the quality of our questions decides the quality of our answers. My heart wants me to go. And of course, once I made up this decision in my mind, I thought about all the possibilities. I thought about the joy of seeing all my family, seeing some friends. I thought about the possibility of extending my trip longer than my mom and my little brother and spending a week on my own, just exploring the country in the way that I've always wanted to explore it. I thought about seeing people I haven't seen in a long time, visiting places I haven't visited in a long time, and I could do it if I say yes. If I trust that the money situation will get handled one way or another. In the weeks prior and the weeks following, I could work extra hard. I could push myself to be ready for such an experience. I even did think about logistics with this podcast and what I would do if I was in Poland for 3 weeks. Would I record a bunch in advance and schedule them to post? Or would I keep up with recording daily, but maybe I only post once a week when I get access to good Wi-Fi? So it'll be more like 7 episodes get batch created all at once. Because fun fact, at my grandma's house, they have no Wi-Fi. My aunts and uncles do, of course. But my grandma, absolutely none. They never needed it, and they still don't need it. And that's exactly how it's supposed to be. And then I realized that thinking about things like logistics is simply just a logistics problem. Meaning the solution is easy. You just have to find it. You have to be creative and come up with it. But I know that I'm a hardworking and creative man, and I can always find a way. So ruminating on logistics is more so fear-based than it is it being an actual problem. I'm proud that I'm using this tool and not just talking about it. When I talk about something on here, I don't talk about it because I think it would be a good thing to do. I usually talk about the stuff that I'm already doing for myself. That's how I know that at this stage of my life, it works. I also acknowledge that there may be way better ways, or there's ways, tools, exercises, techniques that work better for different situations. So I always leave that door open, the door to learning something new, to accepting new information. Now I just get to ask myself the question, how cool is it that I'm not the same person that I was 3 years ago? How cool is it that I'm not the same person that I was 1 year ago? How cool is it that I'm not the same person that I was yesterday? When I was thinking about this trip, potentially going, I found this flutter in my heart starting to kick in. I was fantasizing all these different possibilities of what could happen. What could I see on this trip? What could it be like? And it's funny because I would get uncomfortable by that flutter. I'd get uncomfortable wanting my body to stop. It was very brief that I would want it to stop, but I would feel it. It's almost like I want to protect myself. But then I let myself just feel it. I remind myself that it's okay to have these sensations and to feel them. And I decided to give it a new definition. And instead of saying that it was my mind or my body craving fantasies, I instead started saying, it's my soul looking for my fairy tale moments. At first I started saying fairy tale stories, but I don't think fairy tale stories happen. Or in truth, I know they don't happen. Fairy tales always leave out the worst parts. But in life, we go through those worst parts. I think because of that fact, because we go through those worst parts, people write off the entire idea of fairy tales. I didn't like that definition. I didn't like that explanation. So I said to myself, it's just my soul wanting my fairy tale moments. Because we can all still have and create moments that are like a fairy tale. I don't want to discredit, I don't want to discard any feeling, any desire, any sensation that I have. It's there for a reason. So instead of belittling those feelings, I encourage them. I want to think the way I think. I want to feel the way I feel. I want to behave the way I behave. I get to choose all those things. It doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen with practice. You could start to influence yourself. I could influence myself to start finding and creating my fairy tale moments. Now, whether my fairy tale moments happen or not is only partly up to me. There's a lot of different variables, and it has a lot to do with my mindset going into it. So I'm not saying that they're all going to happen, but I choose to leave that door open. Give myself the chance, because it's also not about the fairy tale moment happening immediately, but leaving the door open for some mysterious force to plant a seed when I'm not looking. I leave the door open so someone could run through it real fast, plant a seed, and run back out. Only later do I see what the seed sprouts into. I would call that moment a fairy tale, but one that I'll see has been growing for a very long time. I had a lot to say in this episode. I see that. In truth, it started with just 2 or 3 things I wanted to bring up, and me going on tangents. I love that about the conversation. What I love for you is that you can quite clearly see how I think, how my brain works, because quite literally this is me talking to myself every single day for at least 20 to 30 minutes a day. This is just the small portion that's done out loud and recorded, but I talk to myself all the time. It's not always so nice. It's not always helpful or extremely supportive, but in talking and just having the conversation, it opens up that door to make it nice and helpful and supportive. And I just hope one day these conversations open doors to other conversations. I hope that even now, me talking to myself in my room by myself at 4 in the morning opens up a conversation for you that you wouldn't have otherwise. Seek something different. Ask yourself different questions. Where's the love and where's the fear? Love is always harder, and it's always most worth it. Remember to always fill up with the love. I say that every day for a reason. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I love you.